The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, Adam Peters spoke and addressed the media today at the NFL Scouting Combine. We are expected to hear from Dan Quinn, the head coach of the Commanders, a little bit later on today. So, as I always do, I love to dive into these press conferences to see if there's anything to actually take away. He said a lot without saying anything, which is, I think, one of the superpowers of Adam Peters. He was asked a bevy of questions, including one question that insinuated that if he did not get a deal done with Laramie Tunsil before March 11th, that they may have to use the franchise tag on him, to which Adam Peters laughed and responded, he's under contract this year. He's got a year left. So this is what happens when you expand the net, right? You allow these media members, these national media members in here who have no idea what they're talking about. It's akin to the Super Bowl, right? You get these people from all these different spaces where they're just not as in tune to the situation as they should be, but that's nor here nor there. There was a lot of interesting dialogue from his press conference, so we'll just dive in and knock it out real quick. So the first question that he was asked was, do you approach the draft any different this year than you did last year? Last year, you had the 29th pick. This year, you have a top 10 pick at number 7. Is there a different approach? And he says, no, it's the same. The approach is the same. He says, theoretically speaking, the thought process is slightly different from the standpoint of what's available to you initially, but you have to do your due diligence on all of the players, because he says, what if somebody calls you from 29 and you want to move back? What they're offering is something you can't refuse. Well, if you haven't done the work on the other prospects that you expect to go in the first round because you expected to pick at 7, and you get that phone call, now you're scrambling, or as a wise man used to say, you're shuffling your papers. So essentially, he said, you have to do the work. Whether you're at 7, you're at 29, wherever, you have to do the work, because you just don't know where you'll end up in the draft. So he says you approach it the same, right? He was asked about 2 different questions, and he just completely, I don't want to say ignored, because he spent so much time answering the latter, he didn't even answer the former, which I was actually interested to see what his answer was going to be. So he was asked, what are the traits you look for in an X wide receiver? And then the other question that was attached to it, which is the danger in asking 2 questions at once, is what does arm length and pass rusher mean to you? Like, is there a preference, or do you care? Is that a big deal for you? Is that a deal breaker? Because that's a big conversation this draft with the upper echelon pass rushers, the Reuben Baines, the David Baileys of the world. These are guys with shorter arm lengths, but they're the best probably that you're going to find in this year's draft class. So does that matter to you? And he just dove into the pass rusher question and didn't even answer what traits he's looking for in an X wide receiver. And he basically said, look, you would prefer to have Myles Garrett. Like, that's the goal, right? Is to find the Myles Garrett. Obviously, those don't grow on trees, and those guys aren't out there. So you look for guys that know how to use what they were given. Now, he said you can get a guy that has extremely long arms and they don't use them, right? They don't extend them, lock them out. You can get a guy with shorter arms, but he knows how to maneuver with shorter arms. He's always had shorter arms, so he's always had to figure it out. And so he's like, I'm just looking for guys that understand how to rush the quarterback, looking for explosiveness, guys that can turn the corner. These are things that are universal. And would you prefer guys with length? He said, yes, of course. He said, you know, you always want to err on the side of caution and you rather have it than not have it. But is it an absolute deal breaker if a guy has shorter arms? Absolutely not. It's basically what he said. So this question was kind of funny. They asked him about the offensive coordinator. They said the two longest tenured offensive coordinators are going into their second year. How do you keep continuity? And so that's an interesting question. It really speaks to the constant change in the NFL at offensive coordinator. Now, this is a misleading question because you have play callers who have been in their post as head coaches for quite some time, right? But the offensive coordinator, this is the issue with having a defensive head coach. I've talked about this ad nauseum, so I'm not going to talk your head off about it right now, but this is the danger. This is the worry about having a defensive head coach. This forces you to have to constantly find offensive coordinators if you're having success. And it can go the other way. Kyle Shanahan consistently is looking for a defensive coordinator because they're having success in San Francisco. This is the second time he's had to hire someone because Robert Saleh got a job. He had to hire another defensive coordinator after DeMeco Ryans got a job, right? And then he's had guys in there that he wasn't as pleased with the job that they did, so he had to find another defensive coordinator. And that's been a revolving door for him. But you'd rather have that because that doesn't mess up the continuity of your offense and your quarterback, which is more important than figuring out, all right, who's going to come in here and call my defense? Offensive coordinators in this league are cycled out so frequently because those are the guys that are more likely to get a head coaching job. And so he said it's tough, but it's not impossible to find success with all the change. He said it speaks to the volatility of the NFL, which it really does. Offensive coordinator is a great barometer of how things change so rapidly in this league. We had 10 new head coaches this year, and probably another 3 or 4 teams got rid of their coordinators and swapped them out for a new coordinator, including here in Washington. So there's a ton of change at the coordinator position, specifically offensive. And he said New England, new offensive coordinator, went all the way to the Super Bowl, but he did make sure he said, but that's an experienced offensive coordinator. And so we'll see what happens. If David Blau is highly successful, if this team makes it to the NFC Championship game this year, he will be a hot commodity next year as a head coach. He may not get a job, but he will be a hot commodity. And if he does it again a second year, he's gone. That's why the longest tenured offensive coordinator is going into year 2, because that's the nature of the beast. And then there was sort of a follow-up question to that where they said, did that factor into the decision-making with David Blau and having some continuity for Jaden? And he reiterated what Dan Quinn said roughly a couple weeks ago, when he said their decision-making process is affected by Jaden Daniels in every way, shape, and form. Every step of the way, every decision that they make, it is with Jaden Daniels in mind, right? He said, we factor in to our decision-making, how does this affect Jaden every single time? No equivocations. That's the way it's supposed to be. When you have a star quarterback, when you have one of them ones, you need to make sure that everything that you're doing affects him in a positive way and puts him in a better position to be successful than before. Ben Standing asked Adam Peters, have they made a final decision on Marshawn Lattimore yet? He said, no, they haven't. Look at my face. Look at my face. Yeah, right. They haven't made a decision on Marshawn. I'm gonna take his word for it. I'm gonna take him at face value. They have. He said, quote unquote, we have to have some more conversations, a few more conversations. No, you don't. Stop it. Marshawn Lattimore is getting released, and the exclamation point was him getting in trouble this offseason. If there was even a shot at him being brought back, that went by the wayside when he got in trouble this offseason. He wasn't coming back anyway. He had played his last snap as a Commander last year. But he says that they haven't made a final decision, and they don't have to make a decision on him until there's a deadline attached. My guess is the deadline is the start of the new league year, so they've roughly got 2 weeks to make a decision on Marshawn Lattimore, and they don't have to make it right now, but they've made it already. They're going to cut him. They're going to save that money, and they're going to reallocate that elsewhere. But again, I'll allow him to take, essentially plead the fifth on that for now, because he doesn't have to show his hand. He doesn't have to show his hand. Not that it matters, but I thought this was interesting. So Brian Johnson is out. We talked about this yesterday. He's a part of the Los Angeles Rams staff. He went along with Cliff to LA to join Sean McVay, a part of that staff there. And so he was basically asked about whether or not they were going to look to fill that position. And he started off his answer by basically saying, I don't want to get too much into coaching, details and the staff and the construction of it. Look, he's told us before, in his defense, that's not my lane. I stay in my lane. When he is up there at the podium with DQ and they ask a coaching staff question, he quickly refers that to DQ. I don't do the coaching staff. That's DQ's thing. I'm there for support. So him being asked the coaching staff question, he was like, hey, look, man, I really don't want to get into that. But I'll just say this. We want to surround David Blau with as much help as we can to give him the best chance to succeed. And he basically said, we are going to fill that position, whether it's internally or externally. So I said the same thing yesterday. I said, being that they tried to fill the defensive pass game coordinator position with Jake Olson, they're going to fill both of those positions, I believe, both defensively and offensively, the pass game coordinators, because it's such an important role now on NFL staffs. I don't know if there's an NFL team that doesn't have a defensive and offensive pass game coordinator. Like, it's such an important piece of the puzzle, having an extra set of eyes, an extra guy to help you game plan and put things together, make things make sense, exploit things that you may not have an opportunity to see. It is so pivotal and vital now. You'll be hard-pressed to find an NFL team that doesn't have one of those on their staff. I find it hard to believe that 2 first-time coordinators aren't going to have the luxury of having a defensive and offensive pass game coordinator. I don't think that's going to be the case here. And he basically said they're going to do something to fill Brian Johnson's role on the staff. He was asked about Tim Gribble leaving the team after 24 years of service to this organization. He left to go be home. Tim Gribble was the director of college scouting and had done a phenomenal job here for over 2 decades. So much so that Adam Peters, upon getting here, kept him here, because generally when you come into a system and you're the new general manager, you want to bring all your guys in. We saw him clean house. He brought in a bunch of guys he was comfortable with in terms of his staff, front office staff, scouting department. He cleaned house. He got rid of a lot of guys. Gribble wasn't one of them. Kept him on board. And Adam Peters used a similar situation that he had when he was the director of college scouting with the San Francisco 49ers, with the Denver Broncos, and an opportunity for him to go be the assistant GM came about in San Francisco. It was his hometown. He wanted to take the job. The timing wasn't great because it was in January, right? That opportunity presented itself in January, which is what happened with Tim Gribble. He left at the end of, the season, roughly the end of January, as the hires were being made in Pittsburgh with Mike McCarthy, who was looking to give him an opportunity. And he took it. Gribble's from Pitt. He went to Pitt. He wanted to go home, and he was given the opportunity to do so. And Adam Peters just kind of played back on his experience when he got a similar opportunity. And John Elway said, yo, go home. No, go do your thing, bro. I know it's a tough situation. It's right before the draft. We could actually really use you, but go take that opportunity, man. And they did the same thing for Tim Gribble. So I thought this was one of the most interesting questions, answers. The most interesting conversation was the one around Brandon Aiyuk. We're going to get to that one here in a second. But he was basically asked the difference between Joe Witt Jr. and Durante Jones's scheme in terms of the type of player you're looking for. And he took the question and extended it to David Blau. He said that both guys did a tremendous job of putting together a presentation, essentially showing the type of players that they need to make their systems work. And he said with Durante Jones in particular, he said he didn't give him a prototype. He said instead, he showed him the multiple way of his defense working. And thus, it is more important to have guys that are flexible, guys that have diversity, more so than this is the archetype of what I'm looking for. Like this type, body type, this type of athlete. He's like, more so, we're playing this scheme, we're playing this scheme, we could be in this scheme, we can be in this look. And the guy needs to be able to do this, 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 and that, if at all possible. So he said that they did a tremendous job of conveying to them exactly what they're looking for. Now it's his job and his staff's job to go out and locate those football players and bring them to Washington. So he said him and David Blau, Durante Jones and David Blau, did a tremendous job of mapping that out for them, giving them the blueprint of what they need. Now it's Adam Peters and his staff's job to kind of bring their vision to light. We talked about this yesterday. Laremy Tunsil getting a deal done. This feels like something that needs to happen. And he was speaking my language today. So I was adamant yesterday, you got to find a way to get the deal done. I said, I don't know if these conversations, I had assumed that the conversations had not started and had not taken place yet. And I said, you got to start these conversations at Indy, and you got to find a way to get this deal done ASAP. And, Adam Peters said in his exit interview after the season that he learned from the Terry situation and he wanted to make Laremy Tunsil's extension a priority. And he basically echoed that. And he said, I've been in constant communication with Laremy and his people about trying to get this deal done. Then they pressed him and said, is there a timeline? Would you like to get this done before the start of the new league year? And he's like, there's no timeline. And I said this yesterday, there's no timeline. Like there's no bonus that kicks in. There's no, if you don't do it by X date, this happens. So there's nothing forcing them to make a decision. And I've said this many a times to you, and it's proven true over and over again. Deadlines spur action. So there's no hard deadline. As we found out last year with Terry, the deadline was the season. So they got it done before the season, but so much damage was done because there were other deadlines. The one that we felt like was the hard line deadline, the line in the sand, that was training camp. It needed to be done by camp. It didn't happen. For me, there is no deadline because Laremy Tunsil's not coming to any of the OTAs. So there's no deadline there. The deadline, once again, for this deal getting done is camp. However, we have PTSD, and I know we don't matter in all of this, but again, as a fan, we were triggered last year. And so we're worried because we don't want the same thing to be repeated last year, this year. You can't tell us you learned from your mistake and then go and repeat it. I don't think he is. He sounds like a man that is determined to get this thing done. But again, it's a two-way street. Tunsil and his camp have to be talking with some sense. Adam Peters and his guys have to be talking with some sense. And then they have to come together and make it all make sense and get the deal done. Hopefully that happens sooner rather than later. But it was good to hear that they are in communication, as opposed to last year where the Terry situation, there was no communication for long stretches and periods of time, which allowed that thing to drag out way longer than it needed to. He also did say what I said yesterday, which is the longer this shit drags out, if they don't get this done before March 9th, it ain't getting done. I don't believe it ain't getting done until after all of this is done, meaning free agency, the draft, etc. Right? I think you go all the way to May. If this doesn't get done by March 9th, the tampering period for free agency, then you got to skip all the way, fast forward all the way to May, because now everything else takes precedence over that deal. Because now in his mind, I got time. I got this. This is urgent. This is urgent. The free agency period is urgent. The draft, me going to these pro days, me interviewing these prospects, them coming in for visits. This is urgent. This has to be handled now. The Laramie deal can wait. That's the danger in not getting it done sooner rather than later. So I'm hoping something gets done here shortly. I'm not going to hold my breath. There is no deadline, which is Adam Peters' words. There is no deadline. I don't want to put a timeline on it, but we want to get it done. We'll see what happens. So the most intriguing question was that of Brandon Aiyuk. And Adam Peters took the approach of, hey, look, man, Brandon Aiyuk's on the roster right now. I can't speak on another player that's already under contract on another NFL roster. But if you saw the grin on his face as he said that, that shit was eerie. Brandon Aiyuk is going to be a Commander, man. God damn it, he's going to be a Commander. So after seeing that shit, I like to read in between the lines. I'm big on context clues, body language, all of that shit. He basically couldn't stop grinning and then went on to talk about second chances. He was asked, do you believe Brandon Aiyuk deserves a second chance? And he said, yeah, I believe everybody deserves a second chance. And he talked about Javon Kinlaw getting a second chance. And remember, he's still defending that Javon Kinlaw deal. People ripped him last year for the 3-year, $45 million deal that Javon Kinlaw got. I actually thought Kinlaw played really well last year. And if you surround him with even more talent, he can be dominant. We saw what he looked like when there was actual players around him. And you heard what teams who were scouting us, playing against us, said. The only two guys you had to worry about were Javon Kinlaw and Daron Payne. Well, it's not hard to game plan to stop those two guys. If you don't have to worry about anybody rushing off the edge, you don't have to worry about the linebackers, you don't have to worry about anybody else, just those two guys. Well, you can neutralize them. That wasn't the case when the season first started, and you saw the kind of hell and havoc Javon Kinlaw was wreaking. He basically said Javon Kinlaw earned a second opportunity, a second chance, even though he really didn't think that he did anything to be in a position where he needed a second chance. He still felt like Javon Kinlaw earned an opportunity to get the contract that he did by playing the way that he did with the Jets after all the injuries that he sustained in San Francisco. He's like, with Aiyuk, he's like, I know the person. I can't speak about the player. He's on the team, but I know the person, and he's a good dude, and everybody deserves a second chance. I'm like, gotcha. Brandon Aiyuk, Washington Commander. Got it. So now that's a thing for me. Until it doesn't happen, it's going to happen. Brandon Aiyuk is absolutely going to be a Washington Commander. Protecting Jaden. They asked a question about Jaden Daniels, his frame being an issue when he was coming out of the draft. And then, the injuries that he suffered this past year, does that change the way that they want to go about, protecting Jaden, and he's basically said, and this is the absolute correct answer. He basically said protecting Jaden is an organizational thing. It's not a Jaden Daniels protect yourself thing. And again, this goes back to them talking basically about Cliff. Like he said, it's our job to go out and find the right offensive lineman, the right wide receivers, the right tight end, the right running backs to make his job easier. We talked about that. They talked about that. But more specifically, he said, you have to call an offense that puts him in positions. And I think that's when they're talking about Cliff. Cliff didn't always put him in the best positions. We know that. The way that offense was called, him not being under center, they're not being real play action fake. These are things that put Jaden at risk more, because now instead of you having those chunk plays, we don't have a lot of chunk plays. Remember, our offense, even in 2024, was predicated on these long marathon drives, 12 plays, 13 plays, 15 plays. You cannot survive, you cannot thrive in this league that way, not consistently. You can survive, which is what we did in 2024. You cannot thrive by consistently needing to go 15 plays on a drive, because it's the NFL. It's just too hard, because all it takes is a holding penalty. All it takes is a batted ball on 2nd and 9, and now you're in 3rd and 9, and your drive could be derailed. Or you get to 3rd and 7 and it's a batted ball. Your drive is over, right? So you need chunk plays. And the offense that Jaden was in under Cliff Kingsbury didn't necessarily align itself with us being able to get consistent chunk plays. Easy pitch and catch chunk play opportunities. A simple boot with a guy's, tight end sifting or a receiver sifting across the formation, leaking into the flats, and you just get it to him on misdirection. And it's an easy 18-yard gain. Our offense wasn't set up for that type of chunk play. Now it will be. Now it will be. And then he finished his press conference by talking about Andrew Wiley and why they decided to re-sign him to the 2-year, $7.5 million contract that can get up to over $10 million with incentives. And he just said, look, man, we learned so much about Andrew Wiley last year, the person. Like, he's such an integral part of this locker room. He is everything that embodies a commander. We asked him to come in here and restructure his contract last year, and he said he did it in a way that I wouldn't have even done it. Adam Peters said, I was shocked at, how willing he was to do that. And, him being able to play, and I talked about this yesterday, being able to play 4 out of the 5 offensive line positions. Technically, he can play 4 out of the 5. We don't want to ever see Andrew Wiley at left tackle. We are in a very tough spot if that is the case. But we know he can play right tackle, and we know he can play both guard positions. And he can also play in an absolute emergency situation left tackle in a pinch. He can do that as well. And that kind of versatility is rare to find in the NFL. He played well when he was, pushed into action last year, and his ability to stay ready, be a veteran that guys can lean on. I think these are all reasons why I said, a couple of days ago, or maybe even a week ago, I wouldn't mind Andrew Wiley being back. I think that's a guy you bring back. And they absolutely did for continuity purposes, but also they feel like he's a guy that can help if needed. So, and then one more thing on factoring Jaden into the decision-making process. He absolutely acknowledged that having David Blau as his offensive coordinator, Jaden was absolutely a part of that decision-making process. That keeping the continuity between David Blau and Jaden Daniels. And David Blau said this, like, I don't have to learn Jaden. He doesn't have to learn me. I don't have to learn how to trust Jaden, and Jaden doesn't have to learn how to trust me. That's 2 years of equity that we've already established. So never lose sight of that. Never lose sight of the fact that you have to build trust. Like, it's hard for that play to be executed the way that it needs to. Because he came here And by week 5 or 6, guys didn't believe in his play. So it's hard to go out and execute for a guy that you don't believe in what he's calling, because there's no trust there. There's trust that's already established between Jaden and the curve in terms of teams that have a new coordinator and the dynamic between the coordinator. Tear that down and have to rebuild that all the way, start completely over. So instead of going outside the building, finding someone else that's going to have to come in here, Josh Allen has got to learn him of, as you would imagine at the combine, 12 minutes. It was just a shade under 13 minutes long. I surmise that Dan Quinn's will be somewhere similar in Quinn in the next 30 minutes. I'm going to do the exact same thing for him. I'll come back after his press conference, after I've had a chance to digest it. And we'll come back and we'll talk about his. We'll take a quick break, get a word from one of our sponsors, come back on the other side, get to the comment section if any exists, and then we'll get you guys out of here. So you of the hour. Sleeper. Sleeper is the best way to experience and connect over sports together. It's a one-stop shop for all of your sports needs. You can celebrate and chat in the games in real time with other users, get the fastest scores, blazing fast news and alerts right at your fingertips. Play in fantasy leagues and win real money on picks contests. So enjoy sports the way they were meant to, together. Download the #1 sports app today. Predict the hottest football stats like passing yards, receiving yards, touchdowns, interceptions, and much more to cash in on your daily fantasy football skills. Use promo code LTN and Sleeper will match your first deposit up to $100. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. Sleeper. Shout out to Sleeper for sponsoring this stream. If you haven't already done so, use the link in the description to become a Sleeper member or a family, part of the family, Sleeper family. It has been a tremendous ride this season with Sleeper. The app is just fantastic. It's so much fun. And they give you today, they've got a 50% boost on college basketball and the NBA. Telling you right now, if you're not taking advantage of Sleeper, you're missing out. Promo code LTN to get you 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. Let's get this money, man. Let's get this money. Shout out to Sleeper for sponsoring this stream. Also, they've got their new team picks as well, and that's going really well on the app. So check that out also. So I wanted to make mention of this. So I don't know if you guys have been keeping tabs on some of the things. So this just came out about 10 minutes ago. Jets could tag Breece Hall if they can't reach a long-term deal. Again, none of the franchise tags that we have heard about that have already happened or are going to happen are surprises to us. We talked about Breece Hall not making it to free agency. I already told you he's not making it to free agency. The Jets they don't have anything. We've been there once upon a time where we didn't have anything. When you don't have anything, you clutch and hold on as tight as you can to the stuff that you do have. They've got 2 items on offense, Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, and they're not going to let either one of them go. So Breece Hall, more likely than not, going to be tagged. Not a surprise. We talked about Alec Pierce. He's not getting the free agency, I don't think. You know, somebody in the comment section of the video yesterday said that franchise tag is $28 million. And they don't think that the Colts are going to use it on him. Because if you do, then the negotiations start at $28 million. And you're not wrong. You are absolutely spot on. But my question to that person, and I think I responded, I may not have. But if I didn't, this is what I would have said. How much do you think Alec Pierce is going to get on the free agent market? He may not get $28 million, but are you willing to find out? Because again, when you got teams out here with stupid money ready to spend, like the Raiders and the Titans have, and for the Titans, it's a double whammy because you're not only getting yourself a legitimate deep threat option that Cam Ward could use, you're also weakening an AFC South opponent. So you want to do that if at all possible. They got stupid money, and so do the Raiders. And you know the Raiders are going to want to get a big-time wide receiver for their brand-new quarterback, Francisco Mendoza. So understand that that number could easily be eclipsed. Whether you think he deserves it or not is irrelevant. If somebody's willing to pay it, that's the going rate. And with as weak of a wide receiver free agency class as it is, and I don't think the draft, I could be wrong. I haven't looked. I can't say, but I don't think this is a, crazy wide receiver draft class where you're like, I don't need a receiver in free agency. This draft is loaded. I don't think this is that type of draft. There's some good quality receivers here. I don't know if there's any, past maybe 3 or 4 guys. I don't know if there are any game changers, legitimate number 1 stud, you can't stop this guy type wide receivers. So, we'll see. But Pierce is probably not making it out of Indy. Breece Hall probably not making it out of New York with the Jets. We already know Kyle Pitts isn't getting out of Atlanta. And so these are not surprises at all. Not surprises at all. And then the other one that is a little bit concerning is the Browns. They're such a volatile team right now. They've already announced that they're open for business at 6 right in front of us. This is important because, one, we want to be the team that people want to come to shop. You want to move up? Call us. Don't call them. Don't call the team in front of us. Call us. But 2, now this is even more imperative that, and Adam Peters is great at this, so I don't worry. He's not one that runs off at the mouth. But it is even more imperative that you stay away from talking about a position or two too much. Because that is what would force someone to jump in front of you. If they think you're taking a pass rusher, and all you've been talking about all draft process is pass rusher, and everybody knows we need a pass rusher, then if David Bailey is sitting there and I'm at 12 and I want David Bailey, and the Browns are like, we open for business, well, I'm coming up to 6 to jump in front of you to get David Bailey. So I hate when teams announce we're open for business this early because it means they're really, truly open for business. We'll see what happens. That time has officially arrived. I told you the combine is when everything kicks off. Let the rumors and all the chatter begin. So, oh, yes, I'm glad you brought that up, Suge Knight. What's his first name? I called him Francisco. What's his first name? Is it Fernando? Is it Fernando? I think it's Fernando. It's one of them shits. Fernando, Francisco. Shit, he ain't our quarterback. I don't give a damn. I think it's Fernando Mendoza. It's Fernando. Y'all leave me alone, okay? Leave me the hell alone. I'm glad y'all brought it up, though. Zach Ertz, this was from Tom Pelissaro. He had Zach Ertz working out. There were videos of Zach Ertz jumping rope, doing deadlifts. I'm shocked that he's this far, in his rehab. I feel like he just tore his ACL like at the end of the season. That Minnesota game, I want to say, was our first game post-bye. If I'm not mistaken, it was like week 14, week 15. I think it was week 15. So 15 was the Vikings, 16 was the Giants, or was it the other way? No, the Giants, then the Vikings, then the Cowboys. No, the end of the season was all NFC teams. So it was the Vikings was the first game off the bye because we got our asses kicked. Jaden got hurt again. And then you had Dallas, Philly, Dallas. Or excuse me, Philly, Dallas, Philly. So it was, you broke the losing streak against the Giants first. So they were the first game. No, they were prior to the bye, if I'm not mistaken. Because I remember us saying we felt good for all of the guys. They won the game, yada, yada, yada. And I think that was prior to the bye, but whatever. He got hurt in the Minnesota game. I know that for a fact. And whether it was week 14, 15, doesn't matter. It was pretty late in the season for him to already be, and it was definitely December when he got injured. For him to already be deadlifting and jump roping at 36 years old? Huh. Interesting. I don't think he's going to be back here, guys. I see a lot of Commanders fans crashing out about him, being ready, because the word out on the street is he'll be ready for week 1. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I'm happy for Zack. Nobody wants to end their career on, especially one as illustrious as Zach Ertz is. Nobody wants to end their career on a torn ACL, bro. I want to go out on my terms. Good for him. And hopefully he gets an opportunity to do that. It just can't be here. And being that his boy Cliff isn't here, feel confident that it won't be here. We will rage if it's here. And as much as I love Zack and what he can provide, he already was slow as molasses prior to tearing his ACL. A year later, right? A year older and an ACL tear later? Hell no. Hell no. Hopefully he can end up somewhere else. Somebody will give him a shot. Hell, who knows? Maybe the Rams and Cliff Kingsbury will convince Sean McVay that he can still play and he'll get a shot out in LA. But can't be here, right? Not coming. Like if he had remained 100% healthy, there's a conversation that could have been had despite his age, because he still produced well for this team. And he knows how to get open, and he has a rapport with Jaden. But I'm good. I'm good. We have to get younger, more dynamic, more explosive. That includes the tight end position. I'm good. Anyway. So let's get to the comment section, and then we will get out of here. Shadow Striker 789, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, AP face talking about BA. Bro, he's coming here. Like, Brandon Aiyuk will be a Commander as soon as he gets released by the San Francisco 49ers, which I have to believe is going to happen before the start of the new league year. You know what's going to be interesting? I don't know how it's set up. I don't think they owe him any money because they basically took all of his guarantees away. And so by taking all of his guarantees away, I don't think there's anything that they're tied to, any roster bonuses if he's on the roster by this date or this, that, and the third. So theoretically, if the 49ers want to screw him, and I know they want to screw him, right? If they really want to screw him, you wait till all the money's dried up. The Raiders did this to Marcus Mariota years ago, right? You wait till all of the money is dried up when no one has a ton of money left to spend, and then you cut a guy loose. Tell him to go find a new home. So the 49ers are in control of this situation. We'll see. They made it seem like, oh, we're going to get rid of this guy as soon as possible. Like that's the reports we were hearing. Like, oh, they want to rid themselves of Brandon. Well, if they really truly wanted to do that, they would have done it already. Now, there may be a reason as to why they're waiting. You know, there could be financial ramifications for that, right? There could be reasons as to why, or they could just be saying, we're not. I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, might have been last year, but I think it was 2 years ago when, what was the receiver's name? Deontay Johnson. He had this little crazy finish to his season 2 years ago. He went to Carolina and it didn't work there as a free agent. And then the Baltimore Ravens traded for him. He acted like an ass and he ended up getting released. And then he went somewhere else. It didn't work there. And then the Ravens put in a waiver claim for him, got him, and then basically suspended him for the rest of the year to spite him. Like, you can't go work nowhere else, bro. You're done. Deontay Johnson hasn't been back in the league since. Like, if a team's pissed off enough, they can and will spite you if it doesn't hurt them. They'll spite you. So it doesn't matter when they release Brandon Aiyuk. We're gonna have money and he's gonna end up here. So they can't hurt him. he's getting at least a 1-year deal from us, no matter what. So he's absolutely going to be a Commander after seeing him talk about it today. Rod Jones, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Rod Jones writes, Lattimore not released per team will need to reach an injury settlement, 2 million roster bonus, 1.5 settlement, so about 3.5, and then save 15 million. That sounds about right. Like for Adam Peters to say that they haven't made a decision yet, honestly, I think it's disingenuous. But again, he doesn't have to tell us anything. But we all know they're not going to eat, the 18 million or whatever that Lattimore stands to gain this year based off of his play and coming off the injury. And he had a little run-in with the law. Before all of that, forget about the run-in with the law, because I hate bringing that stuff up. His play didn't warrant him getting the money that he was slated to get. And then you pile on top of that the injury, and it just made it a no-brainer. So that makes more sense right there, that they have to figure out navigate the logistics of everything. Like, hey, this amount, this settlement, this, that. All right, now we can cut our ties. It's going to happen, though. There's no way Marshawn Lattimore remains on this roster. Like, Adam Peters realizes that deal didn't work. Now you cut your losses. So I expect that to take place here in the very near future. Thank you for that clarification, Rod. Joseph's Journey. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Joseph writes, elite running back love plus back to 2024 eat the clock offense. Again, we will know, or at least we will have some sort of inkling as to what they are leaning towards doing at the running back position by how they approach free agency. If they sign a running back in free agency, don't care who it is, then they're going to roll with Bill. The guy that they signed in free agency is going to complement him. They're going to bring back Chris Rodriguez Jr. and possibly J-Mac, and they're going to roll. If they do nothing at the running back position, then Jeremiah Love is definitely in play. I looked at the running backs this year. I don't think this is a great running back draft class. This isn't one of those years. Last year was a really good running back draft class. Like free agency, yeah, I'm good. I'm going to get me one of these dudes in the draft. This year, it's the opposite. You better get one of these dudes in free agency because the draft ain't it. So Love is going to be, I think, an interesting commodity. And I would love it if he were here. But again, to me, a first-round running back is a luxury pick. And a luxury that we just don't have afforded to us at this current juncture. You come talk to me in, a month's time after free agency, and I may be talking to you in a totally different tone about where we are and what luxuries we now have based off of the aggressiveness and the approach to free agency. We'll see. I think the sentiment in the chat when I asked about how would you like to attack this offseason if you had to choose offense or defense, I saw quite a few people say, look, man, honestly, I don't really give a shit what side of the ball the guy. We just need a blue chip player, man. We don't have enough of those. Facts. At this point, edge rusher, corner, safety, linebacker, running back, I could care less. I just want a player that is viewed as one of the best at his position in the entire National Football League. You have a chance to get one at 7. I know there's this notion of trading back, and maybe that makes a ton of sense too, especially if the guy that you're after isn't a sought-after commodity, but he still has a chance to be one of the best players in the draft and potentially in the league. But you have a chance to get a game changer at 7. Do that. Do that. And if that is Jeremiah Love, do it. Do it. Do it. We'll see what they decide to do. I right now would not hold my breath if you're hoping that this team drafts Jeremiah Love. I think they're going to, sign a running back in free agency. Again, I think it's going to be Rachaad White, and then they're going to bring back Chris Rodriguez Jr., and then we'll kind of go from there. You got your 3 backs. Obviously, they can bring J-Mac back. That'll give you 4, and that's the way they move forward. I would really like to see them not bring back both of them, either Chris Rodriguez Jr. or J-Mac. You can't bring back both. And I would prefer Chris Rodriguez be the guy you bring back. So we'll see what they decide to do. Anyway, I digress. We are approaching the 3 o'clock hour. So I want you to be able to take in the Dan Quinn press conference. And we will reconvene shortly thereafter, talk about what he had to say, see if we gain any insight as to how they may move in the draft, what they may do with the coaching staff, because that's what I'm more concerned with right now is you got 2 more vacancies now that have cropped up here over the last couple of weeks with your defensive pass game coordinator and now your offensive pass game coordinator no longer being here. Are you going to fill those voids from the outside, or are you going to promote from within? He's not going to tell us, but I would love to hear what his response would be. And I assume someone's going to ask a question about Brian Johnson because Adam Peters was asked about Brian Johnson. So hard for me to believe that Dan Quinn won't be asked about Brian Johnson and the role he had here and how are they going to fill it. So looking forward to seeing what Dan Quinn has to say. We'll come back, break down his press conference as well. But until then, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. You know what this is. Post up. Take command. You guys have a good one. I will see you guys here in a bit, probably an hour from now. Enjoy the press conference, and we will come back and break it all down. Peace.